just almighty, I don't believe what I'm seeing. What do you people think you are, huh? This ain't Philly. This is a hospital, for Christ's sakes. What's the matter with you? You call yourselves adults? Huh? There are children in here. You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Hello, all. Welcome back to What's On Tonight, a podcast with elaborate, quirky, and unpredictable conversations about TV, movies, and more. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
Tonight, we are covering The Pitt, Season 1, Episode 9, titled 00P.M. Please note, this is a spoiler-filled podcast. So if you haven't watched the episode yet and don't want to be spoiled, come back and check us out after you finish watching. So episode 9 was written by the great Noah Wyle, who also co-wrote episode 4, titled 10 a.m., and directed by Quyen Tran. Mandy, would you care to share the synopsis with us?
After an emotional debrief from Robbie on a difficult case, Dana breaks up a waiting room brawl between two moms. Then Whitaker finds common ground with the Kraken, and a car crash between a pedestrian and a former patient puts pressure on McKay.
I just got to say real quick, normally where I get the synopsis is I just Google the Pitt episode, whatever, and there's a really handy guide that pops up. But for whatever reason, this one, it was talking about some couple 8 hours after an earthquake they're in the hospital and trying to survive. And I'm like, wait a minute, when did an earthquake happen in Pittsburgh? It messed me up. So when I went to watch and take notes, thank God for Max has an episode details, and that's where this one came from. I don't know. I felt like telling you all that, but it was weird.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I think I may know what it is, and I didn't go down this rabbit hole, but when I was looking at some articles that for some statistics that we're going to get into later, it took at one point, I found that there is apparently either a TV show or a movie called The Pitt that apparently also has something to do with with hospitals or what have you. And I saw something about disasters, so I'm betting that's what it is. Well,
they had an earthquake,
okay.
So I hope everybody's okay.
Now I'm worried about those guys.
Same. So, yay or nay? I am a big fat yay. Again, another 5. This is 5 broken teeth stuck in some crazy woman's hand out of 5.
I mean, I just can't imagine there being an episode where I'm going to say nay to really any of it. It's just gotten better and better and better every week. So it was a big enthusiastic yay for me.
All right, well, let's dive into the episode. A couple of main points, but going through those main points, we'll get to the majority of the episode, and then we can move on to chart notes. My first point is titled Dr. Langdon. He was heavily involved in a lot of the heavy story this week. So first thing I want to point out is it was really sweet watching him make that call to his kid after the drowning victim died and being like, yes, I'd love to hear your song. I just thought that was a sweet moment. And given what he does later, we really need to give him some props on that one.
Yeah, I think as a parent, it was very poignant to see how much he needed to go and talk to his kid and just make sure his kid, just to hear his voice, like he told the mom on the phone after watching that little girl die. I can't even imagine what that must be like. It was a very Dr. Langdon heavy episode. I don't know about that guy. My feelings on him waffle from one scene to the next.
Right. And that's fair. So let's move into where his most dramatic moments comes from. So we have the MDMA overdose patient. I thought that was a really interesting story just from a medical standpoint. I have never seen in a medical drama the use of an ice bath like that. You hear about it, but I've never seen it. And I thought it was really just a neat thing. And I'm wondering, because it was at that same concert his son went to, if we aren't going to get more patients that come is there going to be a mass overdose or something from that show? I'm curious to see where that goes next. But before we move back into Dr. Langdon and his interaction with Santos, one thing I do want to note is how cool it was of a bonding moment between Santos and Mohan, where she took the blame and his wrath. And when Mohan says, for what it's worth, I think you do belong here. And Santos very sweetly, thank you. It's actually worth a lot. I really love that moment.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, I'd forgotten that is where Dr. Robbie's son is. So please, God, I can't have any more dead kids. Please don't let his son show up as one of these overdose patients from there. My heart just can't take that. But also, I had a thought this week that I think maybe part of Dr. Langdon's problem with Santos is that she reminds him of himself a bit.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think maybe she triggers him because just judging by how he is now and how, it's great that he really appreciates how empathetic and sensitive Dr. King is. But going back through the beginning of this series, that's not his forte. In general, he's pretty insensitive as well a lot of the time. It doesn't seem to come naturally to him. In these later episodes, it looks like he's doing a bit of a better job about it. But if you go back and watch some of the earlier episodes, there's plenty of times where he's just wanting to get in there and get in the action. And so I think possibly that whole deal is that she just reminds him of himself.
I think you're right. That definitely would make sense, because otherwise, why on earth do these two have such
an animosity to each other?
Hardcore relationship. Yeah, it's crazy. But back to what happened. My heart broke for her when he was belittling her like that. And it really thought about the level of abuse that she suffered throughout her life. And I can't imagine how that felt, not only to be talked to like that by anyone, but especially a man, her supervisor, spoke to her like that. And I am so grateful that Robbie caught the tail end of that. And I'm glad that he tore into him. That is not how we talk. And I'm just going to say really, really quick, something was very sexy about Noah Wyle when he shouted, "Shut the fuck up."
Hey, Becky, Noah Wyle could be on the toilet with a cold and have snot pouring out of his nose, and you would still be like, that's my man.
Sexy. Yeah, I watched that a couple times. I think, yeah.
I did it for you, didn't you? I really I know she can be a lot, but I just identify so much with Santos in a lot of ways.
Well, she didn't deserve
She absolutely did deserve that, but she has deserved it at other moments throughout. And I've been on TikTok a bit this week looking at there's a lot of chatter about the show on TikTok and a lot of people with some very strong opinions about the show. And a lot of people just really hate her. I mean, I was surprised even in the episode where she confronted that guy who very likely was abusing his daughter. There's so many people that were just not willing to give her the benefit of the doubt in that situation. I think I even told you that there was one page that I was commenting on where the moderator was like, well, you can't look at this as if it's a TV show. But I mean, how do you really talk about it without acknowledging that it is a TV show and it's scripted?
Right.
And these writers have some definite reasons for putting certain things in the plot. There's a AV Club article. I will send you a link to it if you want to put it in the show notes. I don't know if you want to read it personally because there's some talk in there. It's not really spoilery, but I know you really try to just organically take in every episode as it comes. And there are some times in there where Noah Wyle, it's an interview with Noah Wyle, and there are some times in there where he talks about some things that may be coming up. But one of the things that I got from that article, without giving too much away, is it seems like all of this that we're projecting and reading into, they're leaving it in there deliberately, and we're very likely not going to get a whole lot of closure on some of these things, because what he's trying to do is create personality for these people without giving you far too much context. He wants you to really pay attention to the little details and fill in the blanks for yourself. So all that to say, I see a lot of my younger self in Santos. I do. I just think that she probably was a very bright kid who seems to have come up through some pretty rough circumstances. And I know when I was young, I used snark as a way to try to make friends with people. Like, I didn't see it at the time, but I think I could often make people feel stupid, like I didn't like them. But I was really just trying to joke in the way that, in my family, that sarcasm and snark was winky fingers love language. And so when I got out into the adult world, I think a lot of times I was a real asshole to people and I thought I was just kidding, but it came across the wrong way. And I think that's a lot of her personality. I think they build a lot of that into the personality of Santos. And I think that organically, as the show has gone on, I'm not saying that she's completely changed her personality. She hasn't, but I do see where she is letting go of some of that. And this shift is beating some humanity into her.
Well, yeah, you look at where she was standing there next to, I think it was Javati, looking at the board. And she made the comment to Javati that, losing a kid is always hard and it's okay to be affected by it. That was a very human moment for her. So she's growing. She is definitely growing. And like every single one of these students, even the attendings, they've all got some work to do. So you're right. There is a reason why she is the way she is and why she has this coat of armor on. But it is nice to see how they're slowly peeling back some of those layers, giving us some insight and in turn being able to better understand why she is who she is and the joy in watching her grow.
Right. And I think part of that is some of this that's going on, like what you talked about with Mohan, when she took the blame for Mohan and took the heat from Robbie and that dressing down, and Langdon, I'm sorry, and letting her know you do belong here. I think that is what is going to help her grow. You don't have to scrap and be at competition with the people around you. You can let go of some of that defensiveness and make community and real friends and support. And that makes you a better doctor. And I really loved that moment in the show. And I hope there's more of that as it goes on. Because definitely a challenging character. But, if we're going to give Langdon grace, we need to give her grace as well.
I completely agree. I think it was quite a contrast with how he treated Santos versus how he treated King. And I think your point where he sees himself in Santos, I think he learns from King, and that gives him a bit of more of a compassionate side, because I'm pretty sure he's clocked she's neurodivergent.
Right.
And I think we've gotten confirmation that is a part of her character. So I think it's easy for him to be calmer and more patient and understanding with her, because she is the exact opposite of who he is. And he's learning from her. And I think it helps him be more compassionate. But a couple of things I want to point out with King. When she sat down at the desk and put her earbuds in and was listening to ocean waves, that is me trying to fall asleep every night. I can no longer, due to my anxiety, and at night it's quiet. Your brain decides that's the time it wants to worry about every single thing going on in your world and things that aren't even going on but might. So, it's either leave the TV on low volume for an hour or ocean sounds. I've gotten really into, on Spotify, is a playlist of laundromat sounds, the washer and dryer, which was soothing for me as a kid. So anyway,
I'll have to try that.
It's pretty cool.
I have different things like that I do to fall asleep too. I either keep the phone on low volume. I can't take the light, so I kind of like flip it over, or I'll put on some kind of playlist on Spotify that's sleep sounds, white noise. Sometimes it's classical music, but I'll have to try laundromat.
But I felt her need for peace and calm, and because it was a chaotic episode. I felt her in my soul at that, and I think that it was just more great acting by Taylor Dearden in that moment, and also how subtle it was. But when those two crazy ladies were yelling at each other back and forth in their rooms, why they did not separate them further, but I guess it made for good TV. But her cringing and her reaction, and I appreciate how Dr. Langdon noticed that. He's like, all right, you're going to do this, and then you're going to take a break. I thought it was really cool when he goes in to sit down and talk to her, how calm and soothing he was, and how where Mohan was Santos's reassurance that yes, you belong here. Langdon was King's reassurance that yes, you belong here and you're doing a great job. And that also that he recognized that with her neurodivergent personality and where she was in her, I'm just going to say, I guess, anxiety level at that moment with everything that had gone on, the sisters, the yelling, and the just absolute chaos, that picking gravel out of this man's leg was what she needed, and how excited she was to be able to go and do that. It was such, I liked showing the contrast with Langdon, with Santos, and with King. And I like how it's interesting to see how each one affects him. But I do think in the long run, he's going to learn from both. But just again, more great acting, all three of them, honestly. And then my final note on Langdon is the comment that he made to the lady who was anti-mask about the no masks in surgery was absolutely freaking brilliant.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Suddenly masks work when you're going to have somebody operating on you in a sterile environment.
He's like, I don't want to go against your beliefs.
So to go back just a little bit, first, that smile on Dr. King's face when he told her there's like 1,000 pieces of gravel and she's got this, like he just told her it was snowing on Christmas morning. 1,000? Like it was, she just couldn't believe her good luck. That cracked me up.
It was adorable.
But going back a little bit, one of the things I think, again, when you are the kind of person that is generally more aggressive and more likely to see everything as a battlefield, and I look at my life, and even though I skew more that way, the people in my life that I love and respect, as you know, I have a very small circle of close friends, and all of the people in my life, you included, my friend Robin, my friend Zara, the people that I love the most are very different than me in some key ways. And one of those is that you are all deeply empathetic and compassionate people. And you've taught me real bravery is being able to not allow the world to make you so hard on the outside that you are hurting the people around you. When I was thinking in my head, comparing Santos and Langdon and how they deal with the world and how alike they are, but how I agree with you, I think he really likes Dr. King more. I identify with that as well. I understand that when that is what you feel like is something that you are lacking, you really start to appreciate the strength and bravery it takes to be a kinder person in this world. And so I identify with that as well, personally. I really think that seeing how Mohan reacted with Santos and the way that Langdon acted with King, you can see that they respect those people in a way that you might be surprised considering how brash their own personalities are.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, especially as you're talking, thinking of our friendship and the ways we balance each other. If y'all want to know what mine and Mandy's relationship looks like, it's Santos and Langdon. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We don't talk to each other like that. It is more where King and Langdon, where there are moments I need things and she comes through, and there's moments where she needs things and I come through on an emotional level, and it's a really good balance.
Yeah, I thought a lot about us this week. Actually, I was going to say Mohan and Santos because I think we're both, I don't, not to pat us too hard on the back, but I think we're both very intelligent people. But, we both have different strengths. And to call my own self out, my weakness is I'm always ready to go to the mats. Like I'm ready to start scrapping about everything. And sometimes you have to put your hand on my shoulder and tell me, whoa, girl. And sometimes, I need that. But I also need somebody to tell me that I'm okay and that I'm a good person and that I'm doing the right thing. And you do that for me. So anyway, I don't want to hijack this about us.
Oh, I feel like it's Dr. Evil and Mini-Me.
Yeah.
You complete me. Oh, well, enough about us, because that's what y'all really
don't want to hear. Gotcha.
Listen to this podcast for. Next major point is Dana. Dana was all over this episode, and it was 90% glorious, and then that ending, and we'll work our way to that. But first note I have is her comforting Collins with the miscarriage. I'm glad Collins said something to someone. I'm glad we got confirmation that, okay, no, there is in fact, sadly, no baby. And I really liked it when they were in there in Robbie's debriefing, the way he's talking about losing a kid, and Collins reaches out for Dana and holds her hand. I don't know if you noticed that. That was so sweet. And then after the debriefing, Robbie comes running after Dana to ask about Collins, and Robbie's like, she won't tell me anything. And I wrote the quote down. Dana says, imagine that. She probably learned it from you. And then Robbie looks shocked by her comment. Seriously? You just gave a speech titled How to Literally Bury Your Feelings.
I love that. That may have been the greatest line of the episode. I didn't even catch that because you were talking about that debriefing. It's such a quick thing by design, because yet again, here they are trying to deal with this extreme trauma that they went through, but they're in an ER and they don't have time to even do that. They can't even finish a speech to try to help everybody get to a better mental place. He couldn't even wrap that up because there's another trauma coming in. So I didn't grasp that he was about to tell them, go somewhere where you can just bury your feelings deep down. And it was a literal graveyard.
Right. So, Dr. Robbie.
Yeah, for sure. But that was also a very Dana line. I love her.
When we get into show notes, there is an article where she was interviewed, and I'm going to pretty much read the article, but it's so good. I think you'll get a big kick out of that. So then we move into the waiting room. At first, I was like, okay, this is the most over-the-top story. Like, this felt like Grey's Anatomy to me. But then I stopped and thought, no, our president literally sat in the Oval Office yesterday, and our vice president, and had a toddler fight with the president of Ukraine, who is literally fighting for his people's lives. And that made me think, no, this is not over the top. This is real. This is genuinely the kind of stuff that's happening in the world. And I really love the way Dana busted in, and it's like, this ain't Philly, which I read in reading people's comments on the episode. There are some Philly people who are a little offended by that, but I don't want them to be offended, because it wasn't an insult to the people of Philly. It's just funny because, like Tennessee and Kentucky have a rivalry.
Right.
Philly and Pittsburgh have a rivalry. So it was just funny. I hope they don't take it too seriously. But I think she did a really great job de-escalating. But I'm curious what your thoughts were about the fight itself.
Well, I thought that you mean about the two moms fighting? I was I didn't find it over the top at all. I thought some of the dialogue was a little clunky once they got to the back. But in and of itself, the incident, no, I didn't find that to be unbelievable or any of that. I do want to say, incidentally, that getting that tooth stuck in her knuckle, that happened to my brother once. It's really gross. He was a scrapper in high school, and he once broke off somebody's tooth in one of his knuckles. So apparently that happens quite a bit. What did he call it? A bite fight or fight bite? Was that what Dr. Langdon called it? I didn't even know they had a name on it, but I'm going to use that at every opportunity now.
Well, I genuinely hope you don't have a lot of opportunities where you're seeing somebody get their tooth stuck in somebody else's hand. But if you do, please, by all means.
Back in the day, but no more. But I do want to bring up a couple of things. I'm not going to get too far into the articles that I found this from, because I think this is just widely available information that a lot of our readers may already be aware of. But statistics as far as violence against healthcare workers has gone up exponentially since the pandemic. It's always been a volatile industry to be in. I'm sure you can speak more intelligently to that than I can, Becky, because both your parents were in healthcare, and I'm sure that they have had their fair share of experiences. It's a high stress environment right now. And this is from the nationalnursesunited.org. There was a National Institute of Health report that said that there 8 in 10 nurses have experienced at least one type of workplace violence in the past year. And nearly half of all nurses reported an increase in workplace violence on their unit in the previous year. And nurses experience multiple types of workplace violence on a daily basis, ranging from physical abuse to verbal threats, The three most common types of violence reported were being verbally threatened, 67.8%, physically threatened, 38.7%, and being pinched or scratched, 37.3%. So,
wow.
And just in the last 2 weeks, two huge stories that made the news. There was a Florida nurse. She was attacked by a man that was brought into the hospital that she worked in Palm Springs there's something called the Baker Act in Florida, where I guess it's like a 5150 kind of that you hear about in California, where if they feel like somebody is in need of a psych evaluation, they can force them to go in hospital. And this guy beat her so badly. I'm not going to give the gruesome details, but her name is Lilama Lau. She was 67 years old, or is 67 years old, because again, she is still alive. But what happened to her and the callous way that her admin in her hospital reacted to the situation it's worth a Google. Everybody should look it up. And then also in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a nurse survived an armed man's attack on an intensive care unit in a Pennsylvania hospital. And this was just within the last couple of weeks.
I saw that one on the news.
Yeah. What these people go through, I don't feel like it was exaggerated at all. As you pointed out, the president of our country is a giant bully who screams and yells at like a toddler and calls his political opponents and people who don't support him rats, animals, filthy, quite frankly, things that if you go back and if you look at some of the things that he uses to refer to people that he doesn't like, they are very, very reminiscent of things that Nazi Germany used to say about people that they considered less than human. And I think that's definitely part of it. Hell, During the pandemic, there's a cult leader here in my little town outside of Nashville who, just to get himself some viral points, this man is supposed to be a minister, deliberately went into a Dunkin' Donuts because he knew they were going to ask him to put a mask on, and filmed himself screaming and cursing at a 16-year-old behind the counter.
It's crazy. That's what my point is. Like, my first thought was like, okay, this is a bit much. But then just a few seconds to think, no, it's not. This is real world stuff.
Yeah. So I can't even imagine what our healthcare professionals are going for. God love them. God love them. They're in my prayers.
Amen. So let's move on to the asshole patient.
Oh.
He has a name, but he's just always asshole patient. I think the show did a great job from the start of this season, building that slow escalation to reaching this major boiling point and talking about people who are bullies and say things and feel entitled that it's okay to say those things. When he makes the comment that he's got good insurance, unlike the rest of the losers, basically, he's looking down on all of these other people in the waiting room as though they're
less than human.
Winky fingers, less than people. And then makes the comment that he works and his paychecks, his taxes pay for the medical care that they're getting, that he assumes they're getting ahead of him. And I think Dana tried very good to de-escalate. And I'm glad that she was like, you're a few minutes away. I'm going to use that too, from changing your attitude, or I'm calling the police. And what happens to her in the end was just, I did not expect that. And I think, one, it's sad that people act the way this man act. I don't begrudge him being upset for waiting so long in a waiting room. When you think you're having a heart attack, you don't act like that. You don't treat people like that. That is not the way to resolve the situation. And secondly, to talk about the healthcare workers and the second to second things that they're having to do, and for her not to even be able to walk away and take a 10-minute break without being assaulted and accused of not doing her job. There's so many things about that just crushed my soul. And I wasn't expecting that to happen. It gutted me.
Mm-hmm. Gutted me, infuriated me, made me sad. I mean, as you said, it's just too indicative of the world around us. I mean, there used to be a time where the thought of a man just walking up and punching a woman so much smaller than him would just be insane to think about. I mean, violence against women, quite obviously, is rampant and always has been throughout history, but you just didn't hear about someone coldly, and maybe in the heat of a moment, but just coldly coming up and assaulting a woman like that. And just how cowardly was it that he did it while she was outside and unprotected and no one else was around her? all of that. Just what a piece of shit. I know. Sorry to that actor, but hey, you know what? You did a
You're
great
selling
job.
it.
Yeah, you did a great job. I totally bought that you were a knuckle dragging troglodyte who would go and hit a woman when she was completely defenseless. But man, that just infuriated and upset me.
That was very tough to watch.
It was, but you know what? Good on them for putting it in there. That's the kind of thing that this show does well, is talk about things that are really relevant to what healthcare workers are experiencing and patients are experiencing.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going through notes and I see Mandy just added stuff and I'm very curious now. So before anything else on those major points before we move into chart notes?
No, just fuck that guy. I just want to reiterate one more time. Go to
I
hell.
second that. I look forward to him getting his comeuppance later on.
Yeah, I hope he has a massive heart attack and dies in the middle of the street.
Right, because he walked out AMA. They told him, hey, this is on you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so first chart note, I just want to give a nod to the sweet cleaning lady that was cleaning up the room where the young girl died from drowning. It was just, we think so much about the doctors and nurses and whatnot, and I love how this show zeroes in, even subtle, on the people who literally, without them, the hospital would not run. It would shut down. And, you know, they have feelings and emotions too, and these unfortunate situations affect them as well. And I'm glad that they gave her a shining moment. And I apologize, I did not look up the actress, but I will work on that for next time. But when she found the hair bow, and it was like she almost just took a moment to grieve for this little girl and just honor her, I thought was beautiful. And I'm really glad that they put that in there.
Yeah, me too. It reminded me of that other moment earlier in the season. I can't remember what had happened. I think somebody coded, and it just very subtly, you see them walking by and stopping and saying a little prayer.
I think it was the same person.
I was wondering about that. I didn't go to look it up, but I just think that like you, it's something I really appreciate about this show, that they're not just concentrating solely on doctors and nurses, that they really bring in, Kiara, the social worker, the people that are techs, all of that, the EMT, everybody that makes up this little microcosm that the hospital is. I like that they're honoring those people and their contributions as well.
Yeah. My next chart note was the debriefing, but I think we covered that in main points, unless there's anything else you want to say about it.
No, just how sad again it was that they couldn't even take a moment to really process their feelings about what had just happened, because it was so devastating to everybody.
Next point. First thing I want to say, Mateo is one of the finest young men I have ever seen. I want his hair, that smile.
His little dimples.
I got a little pregnant when he smiled, grinned twice at Javali. Like I think I'm pregnant again right now thinking about it.
I think he likes her. I think
he does too, but I think he made the right choice.
Yeah.
By keeping distance from workers. But I hope at some point there is a way that those two crazy kids can make it work. But I want to give major credit to the young lady who plays Javati and her fumbling over trying to ask him out, but being so brave to do so, even though it was a disaster. And then I don't know if Dana knew what was going on and came in to save her, or if that was just pure coincidence. But when Javati launches into that speech about skiing and Dana's just listening, and then I wrote down Dana's response. She said, and Javati says, Mateo's like a human Utah. Dana says, oh, I've had my share of Utahs. I wish you many Utahs in your lifetime. I just loved that.
Yeah, that was I loved Mateo's a human Utah. I thought that was so funny. And I think you brought up last week the article where the actress who plays Javati was talking about how other dramas before this, it would have been a man playing her role. And she liked that Javati went after, even though it was scary and hard, that she went after, she shot her shot with Mateo. I thought that was great, and just how brave of her and how cool. And it just made me think a little bit about my daughter, who's a young adult, and she's going through, the dating pool and the pitfalls and whatnot. And as a young woman, I didn't appreciate because back then it was very unusual for a girl to make the first move. Hopefully it's a little better than that now. And there are more women like Javati who are being brave and going after what they want, even if it's scary and hard. But it gave me more appreciation for what the young boys back then, that I thought that it was just what boys did. You was be the one to ask you out. But now I think I have a better appreciation of how much bravery and courage it might take to put yourself out there like that and risk rejection.
Yeah, it was just cute. And God bless Earl sitting there munching on a sandwich.
That's us.
Right, it is us. I feel like I'm watching a rom-com.
Yeah.
I just
up in their business.
Earl.
It reminded me of this saying I've seen pretty recently on social media somewhere, where people talk about they don't want to be in drama. They don't want drama in their life, but they love to be part of other people's drama. And that's me and you. We don't want that stress in our life, but if you want to come tell us about all of any kind of drama or mess you got going on in your life, please.
We want to hear it.
Yeah. Come sit next to us.
We were talking on another podcast I did. We were talking about old roommates and crazy stories. And
ooh, girl,
I was talking about our neighbors before the people who live here now.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite frequently that the cops were out there, and I'm like trying to be all up in it. And I'm outside. They're like, yeah, I'm outside with the vacuum cleaner, vacuuming the yard.
Yes.
Just so I can look busy, but I want all that info. What's going on?
I feel like if you are on the phone in a public bathroom or at a restaurant or whatever, and you're talking some crazy shit and you're near me.
You want me to know. You are inviting me in.
Yes. Don't be upset when I ask questions, because now we're all in this together. I need to know everything about what's going on.
Right. Did we just become best friends?
Yup.
All right. Next chart note, Piper and her winky fingers boss. That woman, I do not think she is protecting her at all. Like we talked about last week. She is a bad woman and don't know what's going to happen, but I am so grateful that Piper took the pen, and I don't know who came up with the pen, putting that message inside.
Brilliant.
That is one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen. And I hope that is something that every hospital and shelter out there has for people.
I would sincerely doubt if that is something that every hospital has. Hopefully, to one degree or another, a lot of them do, especially in big cities. And I'm going to do a little bit of a dig, Becky, and even if it's not part of next week's episode, I might take a little time to tell more about this, because I think it's amazing. The street crew, that is a real thing in Pittsburgh. That is a real thing, that they take medicine to the unhoused population in Pittsburgh. And I think that is amazing and phenomenal. I love that. I want to know more about that. And I wish I had remembered to dig deeper into that this week, but I definitely want to talk a little bit about it next week, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. I think that's great. And send me any links to articles that you get, and we'll link them in the show notes. But I think it's great that is a real thing, which segues us into our next point with Whitaker and the Kraken. Our listener, Erica, mentioned last week about having an idea that it seems Whitaker either is an unhoused person or has financial struggles or something. And I watched Whitaker and his interaction with the Kraken through those eyes this week. What she said makes perfect sense. I loved the interaction with Whitaker, how he came in literally covered in armor. And as he talked with the Kraken, it's, slowly diffused, and he heard the man's story and somehow related to what the man was saying. And I thought it was just, Whitaker, I think he did a great job with that. And then his enthusiasm about joining this street team. I hope that is an episode, or at least part of an episode, where they are going out and doing that, like you said, and we get more information.
Yeah, that would be cool.
And then lastly, I can't wait for him and Scrub Nurse to get together. And I know she's not a scrub nurse, but Nikki, maybe, I can't remember her name because I just can't remember anything. But I can't wait for them to get together. And I just noticed before we get into, oh, there it is. Okay, I see it. I want to spend a minute to talk about the rat. I think the rat was a major star in this episode, and I want justice for him. But I thought Whitaker was adorable when he saw the rat, and he's like, yeah, I see you. Your days are numbered.
He's a farm boy.
Yeah. And then the cute moment between Robbie and Collins when he sees the rat and he's like, don't turn around. Which you don't tell someone don't turn around because the first thing you want to do is turn around. Yeah. But then she turns around and in great comedic acting just bolts out of the room and Robbie chuckles, I told you not to turn around.
I want to go back a little bit to Whitaker and the Kraken. I love that he was going in there. It was very both comedic and poignant. He was going in there just covered like he was going into a hazmat unit, trying to protect that last set of scrubs that he's got. Like he was protecting it with his life. But I thought it was great how he was symbolically and physically de-arming himself or, shedding his protective layer.
One little bit at a time.
Right.
Very good point.
As he was talking to the Kraken, it made me think of the Kraken reminded me, as somebody, both of us who are very open and honest about the fact that we have our own mental health struggles. And we are both, I think I can speak for Becky. And when I say we are both like this, not because we want to tell the world all of our personal business, it's because there's such a shame and stigma around mental health that we want people to see that it is totally okay to admit that you are human. I mean, your brain is just like any other part of your body. And there's still a lot we don't understand about how experience and nature play into your mental health struggles, but life is hard. And yeah. I personally don't think that any of us get through this life without having some degree of mental illness at some point. Illness is just part of human nature. But I used to be the kind of person that believed that you could just suck it up and keep going and cure mental illness with a positive attitude. And of course, that does go, there is a lot of correlation between your brain and your thoughts, but there's some things that you're just not going to cure with a sunny disposition.
Right.
But that does not make you less than. You are more than your disease. What this made me think about when I started to accept my own probably lifelong struggle with certain types of mental illness was when my daughter was born. Probably been suffering from depression and to one degree or another since I was 6 years old, at least. Sometimes we're better than others. And I had just gone through like the most stable period in my life where I was really doing well. And then we moved to Charlotte and when Ava was a baby and Eric, my husband, was traveling and I was alone in the city.
I remember this.
Right. And it was horrible. I was 2 weeks after moving in what I thought was going to be an answer to a prayer where I was going to be able to stay home with my child, which is all I wanted. And all of a sudden I am completely down the rabbit hole. That's what I call it when I am in a major depressive episode. And I was terrified. I had no desire to harm my child or anything like that. But sometimes part of depression is intrusive thoughts. And so I kept having all these intrusive thoughts about what if I did harm my child because I knew something was wrong. Anyway, I went to a psychiatric emergency room in Charlotte because at that point it was no longer about, are you a weak person if you take medicine? Because when you have to be there for your child, it doesn't matter whether it's winky fingers weakness or not. You do what you have to do. I hated it, but I knew that I needed to get help. So I went there, had a great doctor. She was able to take me aside and say, I know what you're going through. I had exactly the same experience when I was postpartum. You are not crazy. This is just the way that your brain has been hardwired through experience and also probably biological. Anyway, she was great. But there was a guy there who was gorgeous. He was probably late 20s at the time, fit and had really nice clothes on and no shoes. This was pre-hip. I found out from her, he was a CPA for, I want to say Bank of America. There are a lot of banking hubs and flight hubs in Charlotte. And I want to say he was a CPA for Bank of America and he was schizophrenic and he'd gone off his medication and they found him running through the streets of downtown Charlotte. And it was just a stark reminder that mental health happens to all of us and you are not less than human because you have a disease that takes over sometimes and can be overwhelming. So I loved that plot point. I loved watching how Whitaker handled it. I loved how he talked to him like a person because that man was so deeply ashamed of something that he did when he had no control over himself.
Yep.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about that because I really appreciated that plot point and what they did there.
Yeah, same. There is a stigma. And I'm glad that it seems to be getting better because celebrities, people in spotlights, they're coming out and talking about their own mental illnesses, and I'm grateful for that. But I remember you called me a lot in Charlotte, and I didn't know how to help you. When it came time for me to realize I had hit a deep depression and I needed to go and talk to someone, your experience really helped me feel comfortable to go and do that. And it is scary because my thoughts on if I go to a therapist, that means I'm crazy. And I said that to my therapist, and she said, same response as yours. You're not crazy. Your just brain is wired differently, and this is the way it works. It was the best thing I could have done for myself. So to add to what Mandy said, it's okay to acknowledge that, and you can't convince me everyone doesn't have some sort of mental health issues, big or small, and there's nothing wrong with it. You do what you need to do. If it's medication, if it's therapy, if it's meditation, if it's putting earbuds in the middle of the day and listening to ocean waves, do what you need to do. Just take care of your mental health. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Kids use the word self-care a lot lately, but honestly, that's what we need more of in this world. You know, learning to take care of yourself and love yourself helps you to be compassionate for other people. And before we move on from this, I love that you told me that, Becky, because that's exactly why I am honest. Once I started taking my medicine, after, a lifetime of being told, don't do that, only crazy people do that, which is hilarious because the people telling me that probably needed to be medicated. And I found out that it doesn't make you a different person. It just makes you able to function in a way that you cannot at that moment, at least, and helps you to get back to where you are. You have to do a lot of other work. Usually it's not going to cure you most of the time with my issue, depression and anxiety, but it does help you tremendously. I learned that from Miriam. We had a friend who worked with us who was the first person I ever met who was very upfront and honest and open about the fact that she took medication for her issues. And when I knew her, I loved Miriam to death, but I thought, well, I can handle it with positive thinking. And when I got into that horrible place in Charlotte, I called her my accountability buddy for my issues. And her example is what helped me to be strong enough to be an example for others. And so hearing that I was an example for you, that's, I guess, what I want to get across before we move on from this, is you never know when you're going through the shit, when it's really bad, if you need permission to take care of yourself, if you need permission to be honest about what you're going through, think about what you are going to be doing for others when they see you doing what you need to be healthy, and how it can make your life better.
Yeah. So that was our TED Talk. I'm very curious about your chart notes that you've added. Real quick, I don't want to get too far into it, but I do want to mention, I thought it was an interesting conversation between Colin and her accusation of accusing McKay of being biased against the patient due to her size. I'm curious to see how that plays out. And then my last chart note is, so do you think McKay called the police?
Probably.
For the mother with the troubled kid, or do you think something's already happened and the police found her?
Well, before we go to that, I want to the reason I put David Crosby, I want to mention this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that.
That's okay. The dog's name is Crosby because I found out this week that Noah Wyle and weirdly David Crosby were good friends. I thought that was very interesting. Thought that was really kind of a strange thing. And I also want to say that how certain people react to dogs. I love that was a subtle little thing throughout the entire episode that you could spot the dog people. The nurse Donnie clearly loved that dog.
Oh yeah. He would have taken that dog.
Yeah. He was so happy when they said that they could bring the dog in there with the patient. And I love how the guy's trying to make excuses like, I'm not saying I'm anxious. I'm just saying I would really, 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 really like my dog in there now. So,
and everybody was like, oh yeah. And everybody's like, remember, he has anxiety. Remember, he has anxiety. And Donnie's like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, it was adorable. I just loved that. But as far as what were we talking about? What were you asking about McKay? I know I went backwards there a little bit.
The cops.
Oh, the cops. Yeah, it's obviously we don't know anything yet, but my strong suspicion is that, because he said, we got a report that your son had this list. I do think it was probably somebody from the hospital, and McKay's the most likely suspect.
Okay. I missed that line.
Robbie better not jump her ass about that.
He probably will, but I think it'll be something he learns from, because again, shit's going to hit the fan with the story.
Yeah.
No doubt shit's going to hit the fan.
What I thought was really wonderful about McKay. Okay. So they're Guys, this show, it's so hard to know what Easter eggs they're planning. But after reading the quote from Noah Wyle this week, where he talked about how they deliberately put some things in, he referenced this movie called Harold and Maude. It was from the 70s, and it was about a woman who was very old, who had a relationship with a 20-year-old boy. And throughout the movie, she is just wild and carefree, go for it. And she kind of teaches this very anxious young kid to be more open and free and just stop worrying about so many things. And you never really get a full answer of why she is the way she is. But at one point, very quickly, you see that she has a tattoo on her arm where she's clearly been in a concentration camp. And that's all the context you get. And so I don't know how much we'll ever get from these answers, but I think he is deliberately planting seeds, or the showrunners are deliberately planting seeds in here where you may not get the full context, but you're supposed to see implicit bias, because we all are capable of that. And I think that that is a running theme throughout the show. You notice that Robbie, it seems to be inherently more empathetic to people who have teenage kids. But Colin seems to really be drawn to people who are suffering through a healthcare crisis revolving around pregnancy. And I think it's very interesting when Collins sometimes calls Robbie out on his bias, he gets very defensive. But what I loved here is that when McKay was presented with evidence that she may have acted from implicit bias, instead of immediately shutting that down, she said, I'm going to think about that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was that, but I'm going to think about that. I love that. I think we should all work on that more. It's certainly something I'm trying to work on more. Even though her natural inclination is to defend herself from that because she thinks of herself as a good person. Most of us do. She also didn't completely dismiss it, because I do think maybe that was part of what was going on there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you pointed that out. I don't normally read the chart note itself out, but I have to read what Mandy has typed in here. Who's British in winky fingers with the note, Becky, don't Google. And then Taylor Dearden Dad with, again, Becky, don't Google. So what do you got? I'm curious.
So I just happened through reading up on things throughout this week, listening to some interviews. There are several people you may not think are British, but they are. So I'm going to ask you.
Whitaker. I know Whitaker is.
Oh, how did you know that?
Because I read an article about him.
Okay. So yes, he's one.
I'm going to guess off the cuff, Donnie?
Nope. Not that I know of.
Okay, just tell me.
It's Collins and Mohan.
Really? Okay, yep. Mohan I could see. Collins, now that you mention it, I can hear it. But Whitaker's the one that surprised me.
Me too.
He does not. It's like, for those who watch Dexter, Patrick Gibson, when I was doing research for our special episode to cover that season with Mark, he's Irish. And if you watch that show, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't come out at all. So that's impressive.
Yeah, I was really surprised. Like when I was watching that interview and he started speaking, I was going, what? He did a great job. Honestly, I can't hear an accent in any of them. I think they're all knocking it out of the park. And so for the last one, though, Taylor Dearden's dad, do you know who it is?
I don't. The last name sounds familiar, and I feel like it's someone I should know, but who?
It's Bryan Cranston.
Oh, you know what? I did know that, because if you go back and listen to our first episode and we're introducing the cast, that is one of the points, but I had completely forgotten about that.
If we made that point, I must have just blanked out because I did not have any idea.
I wrote it in the notes and I completely blocked it out. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's cool.
And genetics there, man. I mean, she's a great actress. And once I saw it, I could absolutely see her dad in some of her features. I mean, her style of acting is completely different, but she's also phenomenal. So clearly she's got the acting genes, because I love that man. I love Bryan Cranston. He could do anything. I just thought that was cool. I can't believe I didn't notice it in the first episode when you brought it up.
Well, we've come a long way since then. So
come a long way, baby.
I like this. I think you should do this every episode. Let's start a trivia.
Ooh, yeah.
A trivia section. And then if there's anything that comes up, I'm going to leave that to you because you're the trivia guru. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure.
That was fun.
Yeah.
All right. So my final thought I wrote, and this is a terrible pun, and I'm sorry, everyone, but I couldn't help myself. This episode packed a punch. It was hectic, but it progressed nicely. And as usual, phenomenal acting and they did a great job to progress some of the current storylines and introduce us to new ones. So I loved it.
Great episode. We're in that almost said filler part of the season, but that's not correct. It's just kind of moving the story along. We're really just getting little bits piece by week, and every week is just phenomenal. I can't wait for this to be over so I can go back and binge it. You know what I mean?
Yes, and just watch it unfold.
Right. Because I feel like we're going to pick up on so many different things that I think we do a pretty good job of deep diving every week, but I think we're going to pick up on a lot of things that we're going to not see until you see them all played out all the way to the end.
And just so you all know, at the end of the season, we will do a season 1 recap. I'm thinking it could be kind of fun if either you come over here and spend the night, or I come over there and spend the night, and we break it up into because it's 15 hours of television, but we break it up into 2 days or whatever, but we make some dinner and watch, and then kind of together
that'd be so
write
fun.
notes and whatnot, and record the episode together. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So listeners, if you got any ideas on how we could have a fun season 1 recap that's a little out of the norm, please write in and let us know.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'd like to see people leaving us voice notes. We'd love to have voice notes on it. If anybody out there has thoughts or things that they would like, I know we're doing a great job getting feedback. I appreciate that, all you guys. But if there's some way you want to leave us a voice note so you could actually be heard on the podcast, please do.
Absolutely. We will take your feedback in any way you're comfortable giving it. But there are ways to record notes and send them. Email's the best way. And then we can actually play your voicemails during the feedback part of the episode. And if you're comfortable with it, just if not, and anytime any of y'all give us feedback and you don't want us to read it on the show, just put a little note in there and let me know. Otherwise, you guys give great feedback. So I'm going to let the world hear it. All right, so on to show notes and news. Mandy, what do we got first? This is a bummer.
In the NBC News article, Matt Leviettes writes, a judge is allowing the estate of Michael Crichton, the creator of hit TV series ER, to pursue its lawsuit against Max's new medical drama, The Pitt. Crichton's widow, Sherry Crichton, sued Warner Brothers in August, arguing that the company's new show is an unauthorized reboot of ER. Both shows center around the personal and professional lives of fictionalized doctors, nurses, and other medical staff working in hospital emergency rooms. Warner Brothers filed a motion to dismiss the case last month, citing a California law known as the anti-SLAPP law. Ooh, I like that. We could have used that in this episode. Intended to protect Californians from lawsuits that target free speech. On Monday, the judge sided with the Crichton estate, allowing the suit to move forward. I just don't see it. I understand that this idea was supposed to be
an ER reboot.
Quite honestly, I know you loved ER. I was not that into it. And I feel like this show is just very, very different.
Well, let me say ER is my favorite medical drama of its time. This one is really inching above that. And it was recently this past year that I did a full rewatch on ER. And so it's fresh in my mind, but they aren't the same. And I hope that whatever happens, this does not derail a new season or anything like that. But I think at worst, Warner Brothers is probably going to have to pay them royalties or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just displaying my own bias, but honestly, I just can't see why she's doing this. I mean, what does even if you did believe this was in some way, shape, or form, first of all, the woman's got tons of money. Secondly, even if she did think it was in some way incipient from ER, it's not like it's doing a disservice to the memory of that show. In my opinion, it's a better show.
The reason I think she's doing it is her husband is gone, and ER is one of his biggest legacies. And this show was supposed to be that, and it didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't come to fruition. And I just think she's feeling like, in her mind, they took advantage of her husband's brilliance and moved on without his name being accredited, added, and no credit for him in this new show. And she's upset about it. And she's trying to, I guess, fight for the legacy of her husband. that's why I think she's doing it. Again, not ER. I don't know how it's going to play out, but that's why I think she's doing it.
That makes sense. I could be misremembering, but I thought early on when we talked about this, that the reason that they didn't move forward with the ER spinoff was that she didn't want an ER spinoff. And so they completely revamped and went in a different direction because of that.
I'm going to do some research on that. We'll go back to that and figure it out. But also, listeners, if you have any thoughts on that, please let us know.
Yeah, I could be completely misremembering that, truthfully.
All right, well, moving on. I loved this article. So sorry, this is going to take a minute, but I promise you're going to love it. In an article by Jose Alejandro Bastidas from Yahoo Entertainment, the actress who plays Dana discussed this episode. So episode 9 of the Max medical drama puts the spotlight on ER charge nurse Dana Evans, played by Catherine Lanasa, who shines in a standout scene where she breaks up a physical fight between two women and also tempers the mood of unruly patient Doug Driscoll, played by Doug Powell, also known as the asshole patient, who is waiting for his test results. The episode, which was written by series star Noah Wyle, ends as Dana heads outside for a smoke break when Doug comes out of nowhere and punches her in the face before leaving the hospital against medical advice. The rest of the storyline, she really goes through an existential crisis, Lanasa told the Wrap of the dramatic cliffhanger. She tries to keep it together, but she is really struggling for the rest of the season. And I think that's a device to illustrate what those healthcare workers go through, what they're up against, how badass and resilient they are. Lanasa said she shadowed medical professionals as she prepared to play Dana. And in her research, she heard that nurses often get hit while at work. And Mandy talked about that earlier. She also teased that the next 2 episodes see Dana's journey truly take off as she processes the impact of the attack. Working at the hospital was a great source of meaning and pride for Dana. To have someone violate her in that way, in one punch, he really takes everything away from her, Lanasa said. It was a very degrading experience. Before the punch, viewers saw Dana in full force as she broke up that fight with 2 women in the waiting room who ended up with a physical altercation over face masks. Dana steps in with an impressive monologue asking for decency and composure as people wait to be treated by the overworked medical team. Lanasa said she went into that scene at 100% with her performance, and producers never told her to tone it down. And it goes on to talk about how playing Dana for her is a love letter to all the nurses in the medical community and how she hopes that her portrayal does them justice and makes them proud. And I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's just a great article, and I really liked seeing how she approached it, and that the producers let her be her, not take away or tell her you're being, as women are often told, you're being too much. I'm glad that they're letting her be the way she play this character the way she feels she should.
There's that quote, I should have written it down, and after she broke up that fight where someone said, I think it was Robbie said, you're bringing order to this place. And she said something like, that's what I do, and peace. She sees it as her mission to bring order around that ER and also to bring peace to people. And we've seen instance after instance after instance throughout this season so far where she's done exactly that. So that was almost like her mission statement, and you see how much pride she gets out of that. And the actress did a great job of how much satisfaction Dana gets from that. And then to just see that get brutally taken away from her in just a couple of scenes later, that was really, in a way, that was almost as hard as last week. Just, it was tough. It was really tough. And she did a great job.
She did. 3 snaps in a Z formation. Mm-hmm. I'm showing my age here. Yeah. All right, let's get into some feedback. You want to start us off?
Yeah, at Linda 1541 from YouTube wrote on our episode 8 coverage, great job, ladies, with a heart emoji. Thank you, Linda.
Her little notes always make me
too.
smile.
I'm starting to look forward to them.
So we heard from Maureen Wilson via Facebook Messenger, and she wrote on episode 8. The show overwhelms the emotions on so many levels and barely allows time to catch your breath before the next crisis unfolds. Trauma ER is insane. You are doing a terrific job of highlighting all the many winky fingers feels. Thank you. I am so worried about Dr. Whitaker. His sad, tired eyes are hiding something. He looks so exhausted, and I can't wait to see his character unfold. And I'm curious, Maureen, if you would write in and leave us a voicemail and let us know, having seen what happened with Whitaker this week, what your thoughts are on how new things came to light and what you think about that. And I do want to thank Maureen. She sent us an incredible link last week on the Freedom House ambulance, and we did share it in the show notes for episode 8. If you haven't, go check it out. It's just really great and informative and shines a nice light. And I was going through our Spotify comments, and Maureen wrote on episode 8 via Spotify, I grew up in Detroit in the 60s, and I have vivid memories of many healthcare workers and ambulance attendants being Black. And that adds to my thanks to you for sending us that link and sharing your experiences with us. It's cool. Thank you so much.
Maureen. Erica Land from Facebook writes, this episode was a lot less intense than last week's up until that very last scene. I was so shocked, but not surprised. The guy was a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. Dr. Langan taking Mel under his wing, but then lashing out at Santos every chance he gets. I hope we see a resolution for it soon. I really enjoy his time and interactions with Mel as if she is his calm zen. That is a great point.
Yes!
That is a great point. Yeah, I love that. Then the utter rudeness he has towards Santos just a mere minutes prior is gross. Does he possibly see himself in her? Yes, ma'am. I thought the same thing.
Oh, Erica.
When he was a med student.
Erica, I'm going to say this. I don't know if you like or ever thought or do podcast, but if you ever want to come on the show and do an episode with us, please send me a Facebook message or an email, and let's talk about what you need to make that happen, because your insight is spot on, and I think it would be so much fun to have you on. But anyway, carry on.
I just love that about her noticing that Dr. King was kind of his calm. I thought that was great. Whitaker is becoming more intriguing by the minute for me. I hope we get to see the street team next shift. Yep. Man, it's like you're sitting here with us, girl.
She's in our brain.
AKA next season. I'm still thinking he struggles with basic needs. So that's where his compassion for the Kraken and wanting to be on the street team for the unhoused stems from. As in life, the ones who have the least are always the ones who give the most. Girl.
Oh, heart emoji.
You're so right. Earl enjoying his sandwich, watching the rom-com unfold was so great. How long do you think it will take for the STI patient after they left between 3 and 4 p.m. to call the hotline number, if ever? Man, I don't know.
I'm thinking we're going to know by 6 o'clock.
I'm so glad she took the pen. I mean, there's, hope there, but that was heartbreaking and frustrating. That really was. Those are great insights. Erica, thank you so much.
Thank you all for writing in. It really does mean so much to us. I know I said it last week and I say it again. It means so much to hear from y'all, to know that you're enjoying the show as much as we are, but also that you're enjoying us and our conversations. I've said it before, this is a labor of love from us. We don't make any money or anything. We just do this because we love the show and love each other. And to know that, you guys are out there listening, it just means so much. So please keep the feedback coming and know that every single word you write means so much to both of us. And I do want to, as usual, thank the Pitt Fanpage and the Pitt with Noah Wyle on Max fan page. You guys continue to support us and allow us to share our episodes and feedback on your pages. And again, so much of the great articles that we find are content that comes from these pages. So I'll put links to both the pages in our show notes. So please check them out and give them a like. If you would like to leave us some feedback or just say hi, you can email or send us a voice message as an attachment to what'sontonight2@gmail.com. And that's what's on tonight, the number 2 at gmail.com. You can visit our Facebook page where there will be a post for the next episode, and you can leave feedback in the comments section or send us a message through Facebook Messenger. We can be found on Instagram as well at What's On Tonight Podcast and the number 2. We would greatly appreciate it if you leave a review, comment, like, and or share on your podcast listening app of choice. Mark with Pirate Core Entertainment shared with us today how with each episode our listening and our downloads are growing, and it just warms my heart. Thank you all so much. So, Mandy, I think we should head over to the Doctor's Lounge and hang out with Dr. King and Crosby. And let's talk about any podcast recommendations, good TV or movies that you've seen, or anything else that you want to share.
Well, this week was, tough for me. I was on the road. My uncle passed away this past week, and I was visiting with my aunt in Houston. So I didn't really get a chance to take in a whole lot of TV or podcasts or anything like that. But if you guys would like to say a prayer for my Aunt Marion and for her 2 sons, Sam and Patrick, that would be wonderful, and I would appreciate it.
Oh, I'm sorry that happened.
Well, it's life. We all have to go sometime. It was it's hard, but everybody's going to be all right. But yeah, we would appreciate your prayers.
You got them. Well, I can be heard on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast, Panels to Pixels Podcast, and here on What's On Tonight. As far as podcast recommendations, I was honored to guest on Still Slaying, a Buffyverse podcast with Penny and Kara. Kara was sick, so it was Penny, Sam, and myself. And Sam is mental health care professional, and it was amazing. It felt like a therapy session by the time we got done. It was so much fun. But we covered Angel Season 1, Episode 5, Room with the View. If you like that show, you can find their podcast. And then you can find a lot of other amazing podcasts on podcastica.com. They cover Yellow Jackets, The White Lotus, The Walking Dead is a great rewatch. Just there's so much great content. So check them out. And our episode was released this morning, I saw. So like I said, if you're a fan of that show, give us a listen. It was a lot of laughter and love. It was a great time. And then Mark and I recorded a special episode of What's On Tonight the other night. And it too was released today. You can find it on our Facebook and Instagram pages, as well as on the Pirate Core YouTube page. We covered Dexter Original Sin, the first season. So if you're a fan of that show, please check it out and give us a listen. As far as TV show recommendations, I discovered something called Apple Cider Vinegar on Netflix. It's a show based on a true story.
That story's crazy.
It's not Scamanda. Yeah, it's not Scamanda, so don't confuse the two. But it's similar, where this girl fakes a brain tumor and goes on to get very rich and make a lot of money. Some of it's fictionalized and to hype up the drama of it, but it's insane. And I have 1 episode left to go. So if you're looking for something good to watch outside of the pit, I highly recommend Apple Cider Vinegar on Netflix.
I knew the real story. I haven't seen it yet, but I knew about the story that it's based on. And it is nuts. And how that woman lives with herself, I will never know. It's crazy.
Well, I'm at the point where everything's crumbling down. So I'm curious to see how they end it.
I'll have to catch it.
It's good. You'll like it. I want to give a big thank you to Mark and Pirate Core Entertainment for giving us this platform. Please visit the Pirate Core website. It can be found on our Facebook page, and there you can find our podcast as well as other podcasts like the Slay Lounge podcast with Billy and Will. You can also find other projects Mark is working on.
Well, that wraps up our coverage of episode 9 of The Pit. We will be back next week where we will break down episode 10 titled 00P.M.
Can't believe we're on the countdown towards the end. It's crazy.
No, I know it is. And before we, get to the end here, I want to say there's a lot of craziness going on in the world right now. Please take care of yourselves, guys. Just take care of your mental health. Do the things you need to do to make sure that you are going to be strong for yourself and for the other people out there. And if anything I can take away from this week is let's all just try to be a little bit nice. Just look for ways that we can be kinder to each other throughout the rest of this week. If it's just giving a smile to somebody in the grocery store, opening a door for somebody, telling them that they look nice, whatever. I just think that that's something that we can all do right now to try to dial down a little bit of the hate and the ugliness around us.
Amen. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And no matter how much falls on us, we keep plowing ahead. That's the only way to keep the roads clear. So please be sure to keep plowing. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
We'll catch you next week when we grab the remote and see what's on tonight.
Bye.
I hope that Javadi rides that cute nurse like a stolen horse.
Preach!